I feel about The Last of Us Online and the multiplayer closure since now Naughty Dog has ceased the project? Okay, so I saw this when I was live streaming yesterday, and The Last of Us Online is officially canceled. The writing was on the wall with articles I read before in the past covering factions news, seeing the strenuous development of trying to turn this into a games as a service. And they finally came to the idea, the crossroads, the decision to say, hey, either we're gonna make this offshoot multiplayer, this standalone multiplayer, have like components to it that will be supported for a long time as games as a service, or we're gonna go back to what we know, love, and enjoy, which is the single player content, focusing on that and having more than one single player affair happen in the future. Are we going to stick to our studio identity, or are we going to cave to Jim Ryan having this games as a service fiasco on his hands? And they chose the latter. They chose to decide to keep to what people know Naughty Dog for, which is their stories, because you can argue all day that yes, Factions was good. People play Factions all the time. I love Factions. Factions has a great community. I don't agree with the opinions that nobody ever played Factions, because if someone is saying that, if someone is telling you that, they never played Factions multiplayer in The Last of Us, and that is a God-given fact, and I will stand on that square all of the time. But Naughty Dog is known for their stories, their plots, their characters, which is focal and core to the studio identity. So them going into this direction is a long-term W, I think, in my opinion, and not choosing live service, because live service games recently, as I said in my WB video when they said they're going the direction of live service, when I said there's games that are dying in the live service direction, everyone wants to go the Fortnite direction, and everyone cannot be like Fortnite. You cannot manufacture games as a service success. You need quality. You need a quality game that's fun, enjoyable, and a lot of people want to play. Then you need to do constant updates, constant content, and Naughty Dog is that studio. Not a lot of people are talking about this, but as a Factions player, as a Uncharted multiplayer person, what they wanted to do was create something where, yes, while we know Factions 2 got very ambitious in scope, they usually want to create something where it's like maybe a year or two of development, a multiplayer title that's a year or two of development, and once all those maps are completed, those skins are completed, those characters and everything added to the mix, balance updates, Naughty Dog eventually moves on with multiplayer. That is the common denominator that people aren't talking about. They usually move on with multiplayer. It's done, it's a wrap. Now it's time to move on to the next big single player game that may include Tacked-On multiplayer, may not. And I understand that philosophy, but if you want to make a games as a service, if you want to do that, you can't just do it the Tacked-On way. That is impossible. For what Jim Ryan wanted them to do, the games as a service model, they would have had to like plink in 8 years, 9 years, maybe more max, because now the standards have changed in game development. Now you simply cannot make just a standalone traditional multiplayer if you want it to have like long-term legs and money. Jim Ryan did this whole games as a service plan because he wanted those 12 games to succeed and get like billions of dollars in Fortnite money and put their like single player devs onto a multiplayer project and have that longevity. But the problem was, it was taking away from the vision of the company, the vision of the studio. Jason Schreier even said that Sony employees was getting like disgruntled because they were forced to work on multiplayer. And I think what we need to understand is that Sony's core DNA now is not just multiplayer only. We miss the multiplayer games. I miss SOCOM, I miss Factions, but what is at the core of Sony's DNA is single player and variety content for gaming. That's what you need to do. You stick to what you know. You focus on your strengths and not your weaknesses. And this is one of those prime examples. It is a lesson learned. It is very disappointing to see that a game is not coming into fruition no matter what it is. like I said, faction, scalebound. You can put any sort of canceled game on that list, and I would say, I wish I could have fucking played that. I wish I had that in my fucking hands. I'm so fucking upset. I can't play this game. They definitely put in resources to this game that is going to be either vital to the future or not. We have to see. It's all a wait and see affair. But the fact that we can't play it, it's off the table, right? And I get that as a fan. However, at the same time, not everybody can do games as a service. You can't do it. If you're not willing to commit to that 8-year development plan for games as a service, then it's not worth bothering, because the standards have changed. People want continuous multiplayer they can come back to. And not everybody wants it either. But the only way for that multiplayer to thrive is to have support. And this led to what I call the death of traditional multiplayer. Everybody wants to be like fucking Fortnite. Everybody wants to be like fucking COD. They don't want to make tacked-on multiplayer anymore, and it's jarring, dude. We know that the battery is in the back of developers like this. That is something that they don't really want to do. We heard from Jason Schreier himself saying that there were studios in Sony that were discontent that they're being moved from single player affairs to multiplayer, and that's because Jim Ryan believes in this whole, we're gonna do 12 games as a service and we're gonna hope it pans out for the best. And honestly, that's focusing on the weaknesses of certain studios. Like, Naughty Dog is not known for doing just multiplayer only, especially standalone in scope with Battle Royale. That's like a whole different subject entirely. Guess what happened? They couldn't do it. These are forever games that publishers want to capitalize on and put in max amount of content and see some sort of benefit get reaped. And like I said, I know, and I said this before, there are not live service games that are failures like Siege and all that other stuff I listed in the past, but the novelty will die someday. The game will die someday. Always online, it is going to die. We have not recognized the elements of multiplayer that made it important to preservation. And I think this is a very damning argument. We don't have offline multiplayer anymore. We don't have local co-op anymore. All of this stuff is being stripped away. So when that game finally dies, the reality of the situation is that it's going to become a paperweight. Is going to become useless in the future. What does that tell me? What do I want from multiplayer? I want the experience to be something I could come back to. I want co-op, offline co-op, like Co-op Arena that was in Uncharted 2. Survival modes where I can play those offline and fight the bots there. Why can't I have these options anymore? They're being slowly stripped away for the cycle that is the monetization of games as a service, where it has to go on for years and years and years. And I think, man, I just think that this is a problem. They need to let them do their thing. Do your single player endeavors, which is what you're known for. Give us like 8,000 Game of the Year awards. And then you could put on a tacked-on multiplayer, maybe re-experiment in the future, and that's the best solution. Naughty Dog going the route of a games as a service studio would have completely damned the company if Factions 2 was not successful day one. It would have been toast if it wasn't like a fucking $1 million generator immediately within the first few weeks. And we know this. It had to be a smash hit no matter what. You're putting all your eggs in that basket, it better shine where it is. Because if it doesn't, then it's just dead. Like, and we've seen so many dead games as a service games that just didn't catch on. It's like lightning in a bottle. Hopefully down the line they can repurpose the game and make a nice, smaller multiplayer game that isn't like a wide scope to where they have to put in this, that, or the third to really justify the price and also justify the longevity of the game, because that is the difficulty that we've seen right here before our eyes. And that led to the disappointment. Like I said, this is the death of traditional tacked-on multiplayer, and we're seeing it in full swing right before our eyes. And it's not just Naughty Dog, it's a lot of other studios facing this reality, facing this result. Man, this has been quite the experience, and I just keep saying that I'm just hoping that these future projects really shine through the most and they stick with us no matter what they are. We know one of them is going to be Last of Us Part 3, so that's a given. That's a given. Last of Us is officially a moneymaker. You can say all you want about how everything is rigged for awards, how Sony shouldn't do more Last of Us, but the reality is that it is one of Sony's prime and true bread and butters, money makers, official media darlings, golden babies. It is the golden goose of Naughty Dog over there, and you can love it, you can hate it, but it's true. Hell, the golden goose for Activision is COD, and I don't like COD. I love Last of Us, I don't like COD. The last COD I bought was like 2019, and it's the golden goose over there, and they have a winning strategy for some of the CODs that they make, not the short $70 DLC campaign that was Modern Warfare 3, but I digress. But I'm talking about all the successful CODs that worked. They had a winning formula. People will buy those games. It is what it is. You kinda have to deal with it. You don't want to deal with it. I know you don't want to deal. You want to just completely like cast it to the side. And I know, like, personal feelings, but facts don't care about feelings. And they're going to keep doing Last of Us. Like, people can say, oh, they wasted resources on the Last of Us remastered for part 2 and also the remake. But once again, I will say this multiplayer project wasted more resource and ultimately leading to its cancellation than the remasters, because I keep telling people the remasters and the remake probably had a skeleton crew of new people work on those projects, and it barely cost them any amount of money to get those done with the technology they were working with, especially for the remake. You don't believe me? Go on Twitter. Go search up the remake for The Last of Us Part 1, go search up the remaster, and you'll see a bunch of fresh new faces that they hired saying that this was my first game and I'm part of the skeleton crew, and I'm going to take my experience to work from this game, from this remaster, with the technology and experience I know, and I'm going to apply that to the next game. I'm also not going to sit here and say, well, Naughty Dog's next game is going to be complete trash, and because they worked on this project and they canceled it, it is a foreboding issue with their future projects. We don't know the future. We don't know how the future is going to be coordinated. We don't know what that means for future games. We don't know a thing. The only thing we know is the present, and the present is that The Last of Us Online is canceled. For all we know in the future, they can make 2 more single player games that could be Game of the Year contenders or nominees, and then the people saying that you're just stuck looking like a complete moron because you predicted wrong. So we don't know the future. We have no complete idea on how that's going to be, how that's going to be coordinated. Even I can't see into the future, and I'm more or less optimistic about this news of them going back to single player affairs because I think that was needed. At the same time, again, you are fair to be somewhat bummed out about this news, just like I am. Most people just wanted Factions 2.0. They didn't want this giant scaled up games as a service thing right here. And I think this is just, and I know people are going to say also, oh, it's just a thing of they can't make games anymore. I think this was a victimization of the fact that the internal of Sony is now changing. Jim Ryan is going to be out the door next year, and so will his games as a service plan. And they didn't want to do it, and it shows in the statement. Do you think that PlayStation is happy that this statement came out, that they don't want to work on, they don't want one of their high tier studios working on a games as a service that got canceled? Do you think that PlayStation wanted that out in the ether? No, absolutely not. I think that a lot of publishers are probably mad about this. So are the developers that put in time, effort, and work, and now that's never seeing the light of day. It's a bummer story all around. Nobody wanted it to come out. but it did, and the writing was on the wall. All we wanted as Factions fans was Factions 2.0, and that's it, with a few new modes here or there. And this is all, like, this whole situation has been internalized since Bungie was able to give their opinion on PlayStation Studios doing games as a service, and it started with Naughty Dog. It's like that premise alone is fucking crazy, how they got that authority to do that. And The Last of Us Factions, or Last of Us Online, got internally delayed because of that. Like, what the fuck? That was crazy, but it shows that Sony is hell-bent on this path, and that path might be ending with the cut of games as a service, with 6 games coming out in the imminent future in 2026. And if that flops, this plan is done. All right, it used to be 12, now it's 6. So we see there's a bigger picture going on behind the scenes with games as a service over at PlayStation. It is a kick in the balls, it really is. But I don't think anybody wanted the idea of single player games not being the focus and priority anymore. Single player needs to thrive at Naughty Dog, and I think they made the right decision ultimately in the end. It is no surprise that Jim Ryan is on his way out because of this live service push and the reconsideration of it. Let Naughty Dog and PlayStation Studios do what they do best, which is creating the stories, the games, and the world, and the art that we want to see. Let them do what they want, and once they come out, we will see if it's up to snuff. I'm Renegade Operative. I'm signing out. Man, I hate the fact that traditional multiplayer is dead. Man, I miss stuff like Gears, stuff like Factions 1, like traditional multiplayer, just playing with friends, and it was just tacked on and not really a big deal. GoldenEye, fucking Time Splitters. You know, they just shut down like Free Radical, right? They're gone now, completely. Probably one of the greatest and most underrated studios, in my opinion. Free Radical, who made Time Splitters like 1 through 3, is now history. And Time Splitters 4 is dead. It is dead because of mismanaging, and mismanaging from a publisher to a developer is a real thing that people need to really talk about over this whole political backdrop and thinking they know about game development when they really fucking don't. PlayStation needs to keep their studios known for making great single player games, reviving maybe some old IPs, and doing tacked-on multiplayer without compromising the vision of those studios. They need to stay in their perspective and stay in their lane with their strengths. Here's a better idea. How about focusing on single player related expansions and content that adds on to that proposed story, or it could be a random throwaway mode, focusing on the combat and enhancing that premise entirely. We already saw success with the idea of God of War Ragnarok Valhalla having free roguelike DLC and paying off, and a lot of people really enjoying it, really downloading it, really getting into the thick of this. If No Return is the same, then once again, it's an addition to the single player game with the single player mechanics, and you're throwing in like extra things to make it juicy. Focus on that. People like Spider-Man Miles Morales. I know you're gonna make a Spider-Man 2 standalone story arc involving Venom. Why not just do that, and you'll make money from that, guaranteed. You have the focus of making expanded single player content and making money or making downloads off of that people enjoy. Maybe just a thought, PlayStation, a thought right there to go in that direction and not the Fortnite one. The engine is already in place. It cuts down the cost of development too. I'm a fucking prophet, man. Save me, hire me, get me over there in Sony, and I'll clean that bitch up. I'll clean that bitch out. Just get me on board. I'll take all of your money, and I'll make sure you get all your money in return. I'm a businessman, and this is my business. If you want to make new multiplayer experiences, I mean, you guys purchase Bungie. and you're making them work on something. Oh wait, I forgot, you had an employee layoff at Bungie recently, so that is just bad news entirely, and they need to make their final DLC slap, or else Sony's gonna take full control of that. It's like, what is going on over there? Buy new studios to make you multiplayer if you really want multiplayer, and do creative and ambitious things with people who actually worked on that prior. Don't take your single player studio and think you can morph them into games as a service studio and then expect great results, because every time you're going to fail. That's how it goes. That's the fucking truth, baby. That's how it is. And again, like I said, hopefully this is repurposed into something else. I strongly believe that No Return was going to be a part of the Last of Us factions, no doubt. With a roguelike thing, you could easily slap in co-op with that, and it would fucking $10 co-op, $20. Like, come on, man. I play that shit. I play something like that personally. Go back to basics. Sometimes you gotta go back to basics and understand what worked and what didn't. Like, you don't need grand scale for everything. I think if they decide to go back and repurpose, just put in like Factions 2.0 and The Last of Us Part 3, and people are going to want to play it for the story, and they're going to want to play it for the Tacked-On multiplayer, and you win in both regards. That's how you win, and that's how you get those people that are disgruntled, the factions fans, back in your favor. Anyway, this is me really signing off this time. Hopefully I offered like some suggestions to this discussion as a fan of the franchise and Last of Us and all that other stuff. I think ultimately this was the best decision going forward. We lost Factions 2, but at what cost? The cost of a talented studio not being sent to die because their publishers said so. It almost feels like that Pearl Jam song, if I were to lose you, I surely would lose myself. We're gonna take some time to reminisce a little bit on Factions. Man, it's just holy shit. At least the leaked gameplay, leaked stuff that they showed. I'm gonna keep this super duper short, but I just want to say it's a fucking bummer, and I feel for the Factions community that waited like 4 or 5 years. You were so hyped, you were so ready, just like me, only to end up disappointed. And the first thing that comes to my mind is, how are they going to make up for it? I know how they're gonna do it, but when is it coming? When are the single player treats coming? 2024, we need to see a window. I think we need, next Last of Us Day, we need to see something happen. Just an illusion, just something that leads to The Last of Us Part 3. Because, yeah, it's going to be like, what have you done for me lately? And that's not really the most negative thing to feel in the world. That's just like, what have you done for me lately? I want to see what is transpiring with your future projects, and I want to see them come into fruition. It is a good road to go this route, but still. So let's look at this Factions gameplay real quick. Just stunning, man. I would have taken this no problem. People getting killed, pure chaos, stealth moves, crafting comes back. You got your armor helmet, your armor itself, you got your craftable weapons where, I mean, honestly, you make noise on the map if you start shooting your unsilenced gun, so you can make your silencers and conceal yourself on the map while getting those sniper shots. It looked like, it basically looked like just Factions but better. And that's what I needed, man. I needed this shit to fill in the void between waiting for their new releases. And that's what this was gonna be. Personally speaking, like, just repurpose the game. It's no harm in doing that. And take the large scale stuff and the games as a service, the battle pass, things like that away. But they're probably not going to, because I remember like Last of Us Factions, the first one had micros, stealth kill, obviously, bam, this bitch gets clapped. Oh, they're doing testing, so obviously she went down and got right back up, unless it was like a perk for that. I'm not sure. There was also like stun grenades as well that you could get, and probably use that online, because she just crafted one. Awesome. Here is the thing that was leaked by Dust Golem. It is a screen of The Last of Us Factions, or Last of Us Online, for Part 2. And you had your lobby up, You had a study, so lobby's basic, just go in there and hang with your buddies. A study is probably like lore based on the world of the Last of Us factions and maybe expanded lore that you unlock. There was going to be a story mode. The modes say obviously survivor, which is probably by yourself, or no, they have survivor solos, and then they have battle royale, which can probably be chosen between the mode. You have your solos, your duos, trios, or full squad, and then battle royale. There was going to be the story mode, which was the open world battle royale, obviously interlinked with story. You got season ones, so seasons was coming back, which I think was going to be similar to the Last of Us factions with the raids that would happen, the 12-week journey. But it's all divided into seasons and different content. Maybe it says season 1 week 2 stash thief, and we have the job board here, which is probably seeing leaderboards and everything like that. The bunk is probably to customize your character between different genes, or changing the gender, the sex, the skin, the hair, maybe a customized character that you would take into factions. Then you have your battle pass. I mean, it was quite fucking obvious that this was gonna have a battle pass. It was inevitable, just like Thanos would say, it was inevitable. It was going to happen. And as much as it's hated, we already knew about this, and the story that probably leads to more microtransactions. A lot of people, honestly, they're gonna be happy. Single player people are gonna be very happy this is getting canceled just from the screenshot alone. And I'm telling the God's honest truth, just from the screenshot alone, you're gonna get happiness for it. But for the multiplayer online enthusiasts, it's gonna suck the hardest. It really is. A factions fan, this is gonna hurt really, really hard. And the rest is just them testing out the game, which you got a couple of people standing around, Naughty Dog employees taking like arrows to the head, testing the down animations, the kill animations, going through the floor and just testing the map and making sure stuff isn't broken. I mean, that looks like Hillcrest. Is it Hillcrest? Maybe like Hillcrest would have been a perfect map. And then you have this pause screen saying the expeditions, the days, skip to the next day, restart expedition. I don't know how that was all going to work, skipping between days, if there was any penalty, because there was the thing where they were going to put the in the original, at least, they put the integration of your survivor camp. And if they all died, if it was like a 100% ratio, then that means you have to start your expedition over in the previous game. So I'm not sure if that was coming back. Then you have them testing in the channels for lobbies. Just interesting stuff here that was shown when part 2 was leaked. But that's all for this gameplay. Not really a lot of interesting stuff here, at least just showing some of the maps, like some mansion areas. I think a good map would have been the final map, Santa Barbara, for just running around and causing some fucking mayhem, man. Damn. But that is it. That is this expedition of factions with the leaked gameplay and all that other stuff done. I just wanted to post this final portion here so you can get a glimpse of the game yourself and see how it was originally going to be beforehand as well. So I'm Renegade Operative. I am signing out. I will talk to you guys next time for real. Take care, be safe, and be good people. Later.